Have you ever wondered what the real difference is between a passing dark thought and the kind of evil that actually walks among us? The kind that meticulously plans and remorselessly carries out the unthinkable? Some people don't just cross lines. They utterly erase them, leaving behind devastation and questions that stick with us. Today, we're not just looking at stories. We're staring into documented darkness. Welcome. We're about to look at 5 true crime documentaries that do a lot more than just tell stories about horrific events. They pull you right into the chilling realities of actual murder cases, exploring the murky depths of human psychology and the devastating impact of these incomprehensible acts. These aren't films you'll forget easily. They're made to make you question, to make you feel, and ultimately, to leave you completely speechless. The cases are infamous, the details are profoundly unsettling, and watching them is an experience that, for many, is unforgettable. We're going to explore the minds of killers, the tireless work of investigators, and the lasting pain of victims and communities shattered by these crimes. So, brace yourselves. Our first documentary takes us inside a mind that's as articulate as it is terrifyingly warped. It's genuinely hard to square the two. Kemper on Kemper, Inside the Mind of a Serial Killer, focuses on Edmund Kemper, known by that chilling name, the co-ed killer. This towering man committed a string of brutal murders back in the 1970s. His victims included young female hitchhikers and, in a horrifying end to his spree, his own mother and her friend. What makes this 2018 documentary so deeply disturbing is what's at its heart. Extensive interview footage with Kemper himself, conducted by former FBI agent John Douglas. Now, many of you might know Douglas as a pioneer in criminal profiling, and his conversations with Kemper were key in helping the FBI understand serial offenders. You're not just hearing about Kemper's crimes, you're hearing Kemper, in his own calm, intelligent, and eerily detached voice, talk about his atrocities and the thoughts behind them. He discusses his motivations, his methods, and his inner world with a clarity that's absolutely bone-chilling. The thing about Kemper on Kemper that will truly leave you speechless is this direct, unfiltered exposure to the killer's own mind. No dramatic reenactment can ever match the sheer horror of hearing this man, who committed such unspeakable acts of violence and dismemberment, speak with such coherence and seeming self-awareness. He describes his slide into homicidal rage, his necrophilic tendencies, and the complicated relationship with his mother, whom he eventually murdered, with a kind of analytical precision that's profoundly unsettling. It really forces you to confront the uncomfortable truth that such profound evil can exist in someone who, on the surface, sounds articulate and almost eerily rational. This documentary doesn't just tell you about a monster. It lets the monster speak for himself. And that's an experience so disturbing it stays with you long after the credits roll. Next up, we look at a case that perfectly shows the terrifying randomness and careful planning that can mark a serial killer. Method of a Serial Killer, which examines the dark story of Israel Keyes. Keyes is one of the most mysterious and chilling figures in recent American crime. He wasn't a killer who stuck to one area or one type of victim. His crimes were spread out geographically, his victims seemingly chosen at random, which made him incredibly hard to track. This 2018 documentary gets into Keyes' horrifying efficiency after his 2012 arrest for abducting and murdering 18-year-old Samantha Koenig in Anchorage. Alaska. What came out during his interrogations was a shocking revelation. A decade-long reign of terror. Keyes confessed to multiple murders across the United States and hinted at many more victims. But he took most of his secrets with him when he died by suicide in his jail cell later that year. He would meticulously plan his crimes, sometimes years ahead, burying kill kits, stashes of weapons, restraints, and tools for disposing of bodies in remote spots across the country. What's so disturbing here, the part that will leave you speechless, is a couple of things: the sheer calculated coldness and the vast, terrifying unknown. Keyes operated with a chilling lack of any clear emotional reason for many of his killings. He simply seemed to enjoy the act of abduction, assault, and murder. The documentary shows the FBI's painstaking efforts to piece together his movements and identify his victims, a massively difficult task because of his random selection process and his deliberate efforts to avoid patterns. The film really gets across the dread of knowing that someone so methodical, so patient, and so driven by dark impulses could move undetected for so long. The unanswered questions about how many victims he truly had and who they were cast a long, dark shadow. Method of a serial killer ends up being an exploration of a void, a chilling testament to a predator who shattered lives with terrifying precision and left behind a legacy of fear and uncertainty. The FBI even released images of 11 skulls Keyes drew in his own blood in his cell, believing they represented his total number of victims. Our third pick throws us into the very real fear that gripped an entire city. The Netflix docuseries Night Stalker, the hunt for a serial killer. This series revisits the terrifying summer of 1985 in Los Angeles, when Richard Ramirez, dubbed the Night Stalker by the media, unleashed a wave of brutal home invasions, sexual assaults, and murders. The 2021 series does an incredible job of reconstructing the climate of terror Ramirez created. Unlike many serial killers who have a specific victim type or way of operating, Ramirez's attacks were horrifyingly random. He preyed on men, women, and children, rich and poor, across different neighborhoods. His methods were exceptionally brutal, often involving different weapons and satanic symbolism, which just cranked up the public's dread. The documentary leans heavily on the perspectives of the two lead homicide detectives, Gil Carrillo and Frank Salerno, who worked tirelessly on the case. Their memories, combined with accounts from survivors and journalists, paint this vivid picture of a city under siege, where people were literally afraid to sleep in their own homes. What makes Night Stalker so profoundly disturbing, what will truly silence you, is how well it conveys the sheer, raw terror of that time. The series doesn't pull punches about the graphic nature of Ramirez's crimes. It uses archival news footage, crime scene photos handled as sensitively as possible, but still incredibly impactful, and survivor testimonies to show the horror. You really feel the desperation of the investigators as they struggle to find a pattern in the chaos and the growing panic of the community. That randomness meant anyone could be next, a fear the series expertly gets across. And then there's Ramirez himself, with his menacing courtroom behavior and the bizarre groupies he attracted, adding another layer of unsettling fascination. It's a stark look into a dark chapter of Los Angeles history, showing the resilient survivors and the tenacity of law enforcement. But above all, it's a harsh reminder of how one person's depravity can hold an entire city hostage in fear. These stories are undeniably heavy, and the way these documentaries present them can be pretty intense. If you're finding this exploration compelling, or if you have your own thoughts on these cases or documentaries, please think about liking this video and subscribing for more looks into challenging but important subjects. And I'd genuinely like to know, are there any true crime documentaries that have left you speechless? Share your recommendations and experiences in the comments below. Your insights are always really valued here. Now we turn to a case that's horrifying in its length and sheer number of victims with mind of a monster. The Green River Killer. This 2020 documentary, part of the Mind of a Monster series, looks into Gary Ridgway, one of America's most prolific serial killers. Ridgway terrorized the Seattle area for nearly 2 decades, from the early 1980s to the late 1990s, mostly targeting vulnerable women, including sex workers and runaways. He was eventually convicted for 49 murders, but confessed to killing as many as 71, and some think the number could be even higher. Mind of a Monster. The Green River Killer uses a ton of archival material, including extensive police interrogation footage of Ridgway himself, alongside interviews with investigators, journalists, and, crucially, accounts from people who knew the victims. The film carefully pieces together the timeline of his crimes, the massive and often frustrating police investigation that went on for years, and Ridgway's eventual capture thanks to advances in DNA technology. The part that will leave you utterly stunned here is the sheer, numbing scale of Ridgway's predatory behavior and his chilling ability to avoid capture for so long while living a seemingly ordinary life. He was married, he had a steady job, and yet he was systematically hunting and murdering women. The documentary explores the psychological side of Ridgway, a man who seemed unremarkable but harbored such deep-seated hatred and contempt. Watching his flat, emotionless confessions as he describes his crimes in detail is profoundly disturbing. There's a horrifyingly ordinary feel to his evil. The film also really brings home the heartbreak for the countless families who waited decades for answers, and the societal issues that made his chosen victims particularly vulnerable. It's a grim story of a relentless killer and the painstaking, decades-long effort to bring him to justice, forcing us to confront the horrifying reality of how many lives one man could destroy while hiding in plain sight. The fact that victims are still being identified today just adds another layer to this ongoing tragedy. Our final documentary takes on one of the most infamous and psychologically horrifying cases in American history. Mind of a Monster, Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer's name is basically shorthand for some of the most grotesque and disturbing crimes you can imagine. Bullied 17 young men and boys. His crimes involve necrophilia, cannibalism, and even attempts to create zombies by drilling into his victims' skulls. This documentary Dahmer's and the few who actually managed to escape him. It tracks his descent from a troubled young man into a serial killer, exploring how his depraved urges escalated and the systemic failures that allowed him to continue his spree for so long, especially as he preyed on marginalized communities. The horror of Jeffrey Dahmer's story that will leave you without words, shown in this documentary, lies in the truly unfathomable depths of his depravity, the visceral psychological terror his actions create. The film doesn't try to sensationalize things just for shock value, but it doesn't try to clean up the horrific details either. Hearing Dahmer calmly describe his reasons for his gruesome acts, his desire for complete control, companionship, and twisting, is profoundly unsettling. The documentary forces you to really grapple with the reality that a human being is capable of such extreme objectification and violation of others. It's an exploration of the darkest corners of the human mind, where loneliness and obsession curdle into unimaginable violence. The sheer methodical nature of his dismemberments, his preservation of body parts, and his attempts at these macabre experiments are details that are hard to process and even harder to forget. Mind of a Monster. Jeffrey Dahmer is a stark and deeply troubling look at a case that continues to horrify and fascinate, leaving a lasting mark on anyone who learns the full extent of his crimes. These 5 documentaries are definitely not easy to watch. They are designed to be disturbing, to bring up uncomfortable truths about the potential for evil in human nature and the devastating trail that evil leaves behind. They explore the relentless dedication of those who seek justice and the enduring sorrow of those who've lost loved ones to unimaginable violence. From Kemper's articulate horror to Keyes' calculated randomness, Ramirez's citywide terror, Ridgway's sheer number of victims, and Dahmer's grotesque depravity, each film offers a window into a different grim facet of real-life murder. They serve as powerful, if stark, reminders of how fragile life is in the complex, often terrifying, range of human behavior. While our fascination with true crime is complicated, these specific films stand out for their unflinching portrayals and their ability to truly leave you speechless, grappling with the darkness they bring to light and perhaps, as some studies even suggest, making you a little more aware of the world around you. Thank you for joining me on this difficult, but I think important journey through these harrowing stories. If you found this analysis valuable, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts or your own documentary recommendations in the comments. Stay safe and stay thoughtful.